we farmed beets for Libby's. So if you've ever had canned beets, those were probably actually grown by me personally. I think they stick around for a while because nobody eats canned beets. Anyway, so I grew up in a beet farm in rural Wisconsin, and this is what my mom sent me to. This is a class called White Gloves and Party Manners. And this is actually from the introduction. We hope this book will help you now and when you are older. Someday, perhaps, when you are a beautiful young lady, all dressed up in a flowing gown and long white gloves, you will be glad you read this book, because then you'll be completely at ease and having a wonderful time. If ever you see me in a flowing gown and long white gloves, I can guarantee you I will not be completely at ease nor having a good time. But what my mom didn't realize is this is a book on training for service. So I totally know how to like set up the cocktail. I mean, how ridiculous was this? I grew up in a beet farm and I'm learning like white gloves and party manners. Like one of our rules at home was, kids, you remember, we don't give each other the finger in front of grandma. And yet my mom was sending me to white gloves and party manners. So I actually got kicked out of white gloves and party manners because I would not curtsy. And it wasn't so much that I would not curtsy, it's just I was like, I read ahead. And it said the only reason you really have to curtsy anymore is if you meet the Queen of England. So I was like, well, I'm not going to meet the Queen of England, so I don't need to learn how to curtsy. And they're like, but what if you do? And then I said, well, I will turn the other way and pretend like I'm throwing up. And that's actually what kicked me out of white gloves and party manners. So it's like this juxtaposition, right, of like my mom meant to train me, like, what was that, some kind of weird class war on your children, you know? And, but it turned out it was a book on service, and it was totally helpful. There's like things that are totally automatic to me now that would not have been without white gloves and party manners. And so, I feel like most of my leather stories, unfortunately, and my primary leather stories are like, oh, I was in this amazing DS relationship, and then the person died. And then like 2 years later, I was in this other amazing DS relationship, and then the person also died of the same disease, right? So that's kind of my story, unfortunately. But I'm going to tell a story today about myself and Heather McAllister. I was in, who was I? We said we had a Queen Chevalier relationship. And this is about our trip to Lourdes. And like, what could be more vanilla than like two women going on a pilgrimage to a Catholic, to like the Catholic, except for the Vatican, there's no more Catholic place in the world than Lourdes, right? This is called Hail Mary, What a Place. And this was also published in Curve magazine, and you know, it's not like Curve is like, you know, bound and gagged or something. Not that bound and gagged, but it was kind of amazing that even with all the DS subtext and all that, and you know, blatant, they were just like, oh yeah, that's fine. This is in the travel issue. Travel, and by travel, okay. Heather and I were not regular, typical pilgrims at Lourdes, but sometimes you've got to throw caution to the wind and live a little. And by that I mean fly 15 hours on a cut-rate international airplane that doesn't even serve water without a sizable bribe, then take an 8-hour train ride that involves 3 transfers in as many different small French towns. I should add, neither one of us spoke French, although I spoke Creole because I used to live in Haiti. And so Heather would be like, boy, just go speak Creole to them. Just go speak Creole to them. So then I would speak Creole to them, and then because French people have such low opinions of Americans, no expectations, I'd be like, oh, it's so nice to hear an American that speaks French. And I'd be like, I don't think I'm speaking French. And then as I was walking away, I'd say, no, I'm speaking Creole from Haiti. And then they'd be like, and Heather would be like, boy, you really cleared that up. That really helped a lot. But you do all this when your goal is to find a miracle cure for your partner who has cancer. Lourdes, France is a holy place for Catholics because in the mid-19th century, a teenage girl named Bernadette Soubirous reportedly saw the Virgin Mary on 18 separate occasions. Now, of course, that girl is known as Saint Bernadette. After a number of other miracles allegedly occurred there, it became a shrine for millions of devout Catholic pilgrims, that is, and me and my queen. Neither my queen Heather, who I'm referred to, and this is where Curve had to stick in the fact that she was already dead when this came out, so it says, neither my partner Heather, parentheses, who I referred to as my queen before she passed away, and parentheses. Most awkward insertion of, hey, this person is dead ever. They did that without asking me. We were not practicing. However, we called ourselves ironic Catholics in a completely unironic way. In fact, she once accidentally went to a Catholic church wearing one of those knit hats that have the devil horns on it. So, later did her funeral, which I thought was hilarious. So, but when it comes to a miracle cure, you seek what you can get. If somebody had politely, or even not so politely, suggested that Heather would be A-okay if we swam naked together in a vat of whale feces, or fashioned ourselves matching butt plugs of ginger, which, actually, that doesn't sound that bad to me, that we were to wear while singing the national anthem at a Cubs game, that actually does sound bad. That'd be such a, oh God, wouldn't that be a terrible scene where somebody made you sing the national anthem? Oh. At the Cubs game. We would give it some serious thought, too. That is how we came to be walking hand in hand in an after-dark, thousands of lighted, candle-strong procession to honor the Virgin Mary. And actually, when I went to ask where the procession for the Virgin Mary was, all I knew, like, the equivalent in Creole was like, I was like, well, there's going to be people singing and dancing together. And they're like, karaoke? That probably would be more fitting. But anyway. So we're among all the Saint-Horatzi of all Europe and beyond, attempting to keep up with the rosary in French and feeling, as my queen said later, really, really queer. True, Heather and I would never be mistaken for people who fit in, even within our national borders. She was an activist and burlesque diva, and often made total strangers gasp with her sheer glamour, even when coming back from the gym. There was a rumor going around San Francisco that she peed glitter. But because she would only say, well, that brings a whole new meaning to the term golden showers, this was never confirmed. As for me, on a good day, I look like a cross between Dennis the Menace and Miss Hathaway from Beverly Hillbillies. And at that point, it had been a very long time since I had had a good day. We didn't have a big plan for our trip, at least not in the usual touristy way. We were skipping museums and monuments in exchange for a miracle. Since the usual miracle-seeking path involved a dip in the sacred pools that were collected from the spring that Bernadette discovered, visiting was our only agenda item for that day. I accompanied Heather to the building where volunteers helped pilgrims lower themselves into the 60-degree pools. Also, right, sounds like a scene. Most of Catholicism, they can seem like. Then stood awkwardly for a moment, stuck for something to say. Good luck, ma'am, I said, but she was already in the door. I waited outside, reclining on the warm lawn and playing a game of Spot the Nun. After what seemed like a very long while, I felt a few drops of water on my face and turned to my right. The spray was coming from Heather, towering over me and shaking. She had obviously had quite a cry. This didn't seem like a positive sign. She spat, Jesus Christ, they didn't have any fucking towels. I countered with a tentative, so, how do you feel? She said the same, and then after a moment added, but colder, much colder. We had long ago learned that when the situation was very bad, my tendency was try to overcome it with the sheer quantity of words I would level at it. I feel like that's a very butch reaction. Let me see how many words I could say, or perhaps some activities. I revealed something clumsily with my emotions. See, you've been with somebody who built something clumsily. I had therefore been advised by Heather that the only phrase permitted in such situations was a simple, I'm sorry, that sucks. I'm sorry, I said, getting up. She was silent for a moment, took my hand and said, yeah, it sucks. We walked back towards the hotel and Heather sent me to get some food. Now this was in the off-season at Lourdes, so there was hardly anyone around. And Heather was practically on a vegan diet at that time. And we were in rural France. I returned to the hotel 2 hours later with the only non-meat, non-cheese food item I could find. A medium-sized bag of salt and vinegar potato chips. Imagine like all this and get all the way, it's terrible. So I only found, I began to say, but she waved me away. Boy, just sit down, whatever, I'm hungry. Set the table and we'll eat. 10 minutes later, she was glaring at me across the table. We both reached for the bag, because I put out knives and forks and everything. Thank you very much, White Clothes and Party Man. Totally didn't cover that situation. We both reached for the bag and then collapsed in laughter. God, this trip sucks, I said. She said, it sucks ass. The next morning at the train station, I went to check on our luggage once I saw that Heather was safely aboard. Unfortunately, I didn't know the track number, so after I completed my errand, there was this frantic 10 minutes of searching for the right